Welcome to another episode of Working Moms Lab, everyone. I'm thrilled to have Nikkia joining us today. Our paths first crossed back when I was interning at an international CPG company. Nikkia was a few levels above me as an associate director. Nikkia has since traveled the world, leading teams at major companies like Colgate, Twitter, and Netflix. With 2 decades of experience building global industry-leading teams across continents, she's recently embarked on an exciting new chapter beyond the corporate world. What makes Nikkia's story even more inspiring is that she's done all this while raising 2 beautiful girls. I'm eager to dive into her journey, exploring the decisions she's made, the challenges she's faced, and the wisdom she's gained along the way. Nikkia, hand over to you.
Thank you, Bonnie, for having me. I am so proud of you for all that you have achieved. So it's very fun to be on your podcast because you're doing a lot as somebody who is pursuing her own career and a mother and also doing a podcast. So your ambition and the drive that you have is clear. So I want to shout you out before I share a little bit more, but hi to everybody who's listening. It is a pleasure to be on Bonnie's podcast and share a little bit about what I've been up to. But the one thing that I'd say is that it's a joy to be in the company of a strong woman who is exploring all of the facets of her humanity, motherhood being a really key part of it.
Oh, I love that. Multifaceted of humanity. I feel that's the purpose why I started this podcast. So well said.
Perfect.
Yeah, so maybe introduce yourself in your own words. Where are you now? And what are you up to these days? And then we can expand a little bit later.
I'm an ever expanding human. I find it quite difficult to use labels to capture all that I'm trying to do, because now that I've left the world of corporate America, where you have one company and one title, it is hard to capture everything that I'm up to, but I will do my very best. So the first thing that I'm doing is I am helping guide young professionals, young leaders to higher levels of growth and evolution, both in life and in their careers. It's what I've done when I was inside of corporations. And so it's a natural extension for me to use those talents to help people navigate all manner of questions. And the questions are diverse. Everything from I am trying to pivot from one area of the business to another. I am trying to get promoted. How do I position myself well for that? I'm trying to move from being an individual contributor to a manager. What are the things that I need to start to develop and show? To I am trying to find a job. I've been laid off. Or I am now really looking to do more things with my life and not sure how to make those trade-offs. So that's my growth guidance. And I'm also a speaker. I travel around to deliver speeches about everything from the power of research inside of innovation to how to develop really diverse, inclusive, motivated and high-performing teams, to, as a leader, how best to navigate uncertain times of challenge and chaos. So that's another fun thing that I really enjoy doing. And I also have a podcast. My podcast delves into a topic that is really fascinating for me and become more and more important to me as I've gotten older and started to realize where the true priorities are in life beyond work. And that podcast is about exploring the nuances of adult friendship. So these are platonic relationships. These are the relationships that surround us outside of our romantic partnerships, outside of our familial relationships. These are the friends, maybe mentors, and others in our lives who play a significant role and help us feel more human. And the name of the podcast is The Significance of Others. And so that's been a real joy for me. And I think that's about it. I'm sure there are other things that I'm not including in this, but as I said before, I feel so expansive in my own humanity that I no longer look at the things that I do as work or life, personal or professional. It fully is just me.
Oh, wow.
So that's what I've been up to over the last few months since saying goodbye to my last big corporate role, which was at Netflix.
I really love this narrative of expansive self, and it's so beautiful. It's just so beautiful. And I really enjoyed your podcast. I recently recommended your podcast to a few friends. And the last episode I listened to, there's just one sentence that was in my mind all the time. That you can make best friend any time of your life. It not necessarily has to be fixed at one point of time. And that's just so encouraging.
Yeah, it is absolutely true. I do think that friendship is, like so many other beautiful qualities in our lives, something that we need to work on, right? You think about romantic relationships and there's a notion of falling in love and you think that's it, but the reality is that every day requires thoughtfulness, empathy, suspending judgment. And so I think friendship, if you apply the same principles, can be something that you develop later on in life. And it just requires intention, right? So if you have evolved to a point where, and this is okay, you've perhaps outgrown your own friends, or maybe you turn to your old friends only when you need them and not all the time, and find yourself as a mother and as somebody who's striving, needing a different kind of partnership in your friends. If you see somebody and you're like, oh my gosh, like you're somebody who I admire, and it's weird, right? It's not like looking for a mentor. And it's strange as an adult to do the thing that our kids do, which is to say, hey, I like your shoes. Can we be friends?
Can we play together?
Can we go play together? There are very few equivalents to playgrounds for adults, and we're so busy. But it absolutely is possible to let another human know, hey, like, this may feel a little bit strange, but do you want to go to coffee after we drop the kids off at this whatever? Or, I really think you're cool, and this is me speaking because this is how I am. I'm very, very awkward, but in a way that I think is charming. So I will just tell somebody, like, I think you're cool, like, do you want to be friends? And I've been
really? You just say that?
Yeah.
To someone you met on the playground?
Not somebody I met on the playground, but I mean the last two adults, three, but really two, that I have become friends with, like, in the last 2 years, I told them that I want to be friends with them. So one person I met because of a mutual professional contact who thought it would be nice for us to know each other because she worked in research and was a dancer, but we were in different fields. She was a nonprofit working on real important challenges for women across the continent of Africa. And I think at the time I might have been at Twitter or Netflix. Nice jobs, but like I wasn't doing anything for humanity really, other than making them spend more time consuming entertainment. But I thought she dressed cool and, had like a real fun vibe. And I think at some point I texted her and I was like, hey, like, I think you're cool. Like, do you want to like meet up for brunch? And so I think there's something disarming about just being honest and saying the thing that you're thinking, because it's a rare thing for grown-ups to be like, oh, I'm scared, or, I actually do like your shoes, and I am looking for friends, and like, will you be like, it feels strange, but I've found that by just letting her know, and there was this other guy who my husband knows, but we saw each other at a dance party. A friend of ours invited us to a dance party. This is how she would have her birthdays. And he just danced with full freedom. And I was like, oh my God, I love a person who like doesn't care and is just like, I'm dancing. And so I don't remember like if I reached out, it might have been me reaching out, being like, hi, like I'm what I said to you on the dance floor is true. Like I think you're fun and I want to get to know you. And it was interesting because like I'm a married woman, he's a man. But it very platonic because I think I was genuinely about his energy and his vibe. And so those are two relationships that I put a lot of work into. And the work it was like difficult. It was challenging. It was more just intention. I'm going to call you. I'm going to text you. We're going to try and find time to have a dinner without our partners, without our kids, just to get to know each other. And yeah, these are friends that I have today. One just moved from New York to California. The other one is still in New York, but it's a fun thing, to be able to be like, okay, like you put your mind towards working hard, making relationships stronger at work. The same energy you can apply to making connections in your community. But I think as working moms and working people, sometimes you place a lot of energy on the work relationships when between layoffs and life changes, like those don't stay.
Right.
I think that was my big lesson too. I put a lot into relationships at work. And it was important because, we work across functions, we work even in the same company across organizations, and being able to build relationships is big. But in American culture, it's important not to conflate or confuse the relationships that you're having with your coworkers as being, and let me be clear, some of them do turn into really meaningful, real life relationships, but a lot of them are really just a means to an end, right? Like I want to get to know you, but so that I can help you achieve your goals and we can work together collectively. So all of this to say, the idea of making new best friends in adulthood is a real one. It does take work, but I also recognize, because of my own experience, that sometimes it feels harder because you don't have energy on the weekend to do anything but be a mom and be a partner, because you put all of your socialization skills into work.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. I think I have like so many questions about relationships, but another day's conversation. Just maybe shifting a little bit back to the questions that I'm so curious about you. And I know that you already said goodbye to your past life corporate career, but do you mind if we diving into like
Let's
how
go.
you made the pivots? When I knew you in the summer of 2017, I remember you took a big opportunity and moved to Europe with your two kids and husband. That was at Colgate-Palmolive, right? Why you took that job? Like, what's the story behind?
So the story behind that move was more life driven than work driven. So the first is when I was at Colgate, at some point it became clear that the only job opportunities available would be regional leadership roles. And I was always open to moving around. The second thing is I had a mentor for a long time, and she's still a close friend to this day, who was like, the best time to do this is when your kids are young. And at the time, I think I might have had like a 2-year-old and a 5-year-old, or, almost 2-year-old, almost 5-year-old. I did not have a vision for where I was going to go. I'm not one of those career-minded people, despite what it looks like, who has this clear North Star. I want to be VP of this big, area of the business at this big brand name company. And so I'm very short-sighted. I'm a feelings person. And so I felt open to the opportunity because I was already an immigrant, right? So it's not like I had such deep ties to America that I didn't want to leave. At the time, there was a president who got elected who was I'm not a fan of that person. So I won't go into politics, but I remember looking at my partner and being like, if there was a time to get out of America and just not have to worry about this as much, it's now. And so there was this mixing of factors that made the decision quite easy. And the last thing is, I don't think I had the intention to stay at Colgate to become the head of insights globally. And the idea of hopping around from first the Africa Eurasia division, which was what the role was overseeing, to the head of Europe, to the head of Latin America, because these were the regional jobs. And basically you would be moving to more and more responsibility, leading regions that were larger in size, not in terms of land mass or number of countries, but in terms of share of sales. And so Africa Eurasia was the smallest division at Colgate at the time, with only 6% of net sales coming from that region. And it was exciting for me for two reasons. The job itself was located in Switzerland. So even though the countries were all Africa Eurasia, none of them really had any connection to Switzerland. It made sense to have that team sitting across the street, if you will, from the team that was supporting the European division, so we could share resources. Because Eurasia included Russia, Uzbekistan, Ukraine. So there was a part of Europe, Eastern Europe really, that the Africa Eurasia division included. And so I was like, wouldn't it be great to live in Europe? It would be fun to be able to travel around. So that was another factor. And the other is, because this division was so small, the company gave them more freedom to experiment and do what needed to be done to try to grow. And I think that was also appealing, to almost exist inside of a startup in a very large established legacy company.
That sounds so much fun.
I mean, I wouldn't call it fun, but yeah, I think when we decided to go, we were like, it is an adventure. These assignments are just around 2 years. There are some people who will stay on for longer, never return to the US. I think there's something very attractive about working at an international, multinational company in consumer packaged goods, because they have these expat tracks. It's not a thing that you see in tech and entertainment, but basically you have so much taken care of as a parent, right? They will pay for private school education for 5 to 18-year-olds. So the kids are in, British or American schools in these foreign countries. They give you allowances. And so I think for parents, it's actually quite a nice deal. You feel supported. The downside is that you're alone, right? It's not like you're surrounded by family. You move all the time. And so as kids get older, they develop relationships at school and best friends. And so it's a hard thing to rip your kid out of school every 2 years.
And then your spouse just move with you.
Exactly.
And leave everything behind, right?
Exactly. And I think for a long time, it was something that men did more than women, because of women made the decision to stay home. And in my case, I was the one moving. My husband, thankfully, had the kind of career as a musician, as somebody who was always reinventing himself around music, that he could follow me. But at some point, I think we were like, this was a great experiment. But our kids are older now. We want to settle down. We want to build community. We want to make sure that they feel like they could grow in a place. And then I also was like, it's time for me to leave consumer packaged goods to explore something else. But those dynamics that I describe, the political situation, the opportunity to work for a small division within an established company, the fact that being an expat did provide some privileges that made it more comfortable for us to make the decision, combined with being in a centrally located hub of Europe, Switzerland, where you could kind of 2 hours and you're anywhere, was a fun decision for us to make at the time. And I think the other thing that I'd say that makes it difficult for us to say we would do this again is because we have parents who are getting older, and being far away from parents who need your care is a consideration that starts to come into view as we get older. And you know, both of our parents, my husband and I, are on like the time zone that America is on. So, you know, any further, like if we were like Asia, or I think Latin America is okay, I think we would have been less likely to say yes to this particular opportunity.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. I'm sure it was a wonderful experience for your family, for the kids to explore the world with you guys and build those cultural diversity and acceptance in their DNA.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know how much they remember of it, to be honest. They
2 and
do?
5. Yeah, hard.
It's hard. Yeah. I mean, I think my older kid, like, because we came back to the US in September 2019. Yeah, this was just before the pandemic. And, you know, she has some memories for sure of the school, and, you know, we traveled a lot. I think if anything, what they remember is, and this is going to sound weird, they'll never be like, oh, we were privileged to be able to travel. But they do talk about things that if you, like my mother was here visiting us from Trinidad over the last 3 weeks, and she would, honestly, all the time she would tell the kids, you guys don't realize like how much you have. Right? You know, she's trying to get them to be grateful because they talk about, oh, we were in Paris, like, you know, just like normal. And it's not a thing that a lot of people can say, that they travel to all these places. So I guess there is that part of it. They may be more worldly, the kids. They are more aware, but they weren't having this experience in South Africa. Right? They weren't having this experience in a more challenged place, right? Like Switzerland of all places is like very affluent.
Paradise.
Yes. A little bit on the it's almost so perfect, right? Like no crime, very clean, very affluent, that there's no vibes. And I think our family really likes the edginess of a city, of a place that has a mix of cultures. And, you know, it's like why we live in Brooklyn.
Oh, you're in Brooklyn. That's perfect.
Where are you, by the way?
I'm in New Jersey, Hoboken. So it's also, we have a vibe. We have a very good community of young families and working people. And my kids are 2 and 4 now. So it's hard to imagine, like back like 7 years ago, you made such a like brave decision. And it's so amazing that your husband can just follow you.
Yeah, I mean, I'm fascinated by the perception that others have of the decisions that on the outside seem brave, or you know, I've heard people say it seems like you were very strategic with your career, because in my world, if you know, you and I were talking back then and having this conversation, I would express all of the things that are scary about making a big decision like that. But I do think at the time, we had also had a previous international experience where we lived in Mexico City for 3 years. So this was before we had kids. I had my first child while we were on international assignment in Mexico City. And so the decision mentally was less scary because we'd
Mm-hmm.
done all of the work to sell a house, say goodbye to phone numbers, all the things that make you connected to a place you don't realize until you have to like shut it down. So it wasn't as scary. And I think it's important to be honest that Dan, my husband, and thanks to technology, has had a really, I wouldn't say easy, but I think it's also his mindset and how he is. But he has approached these opportunities with an adventurous spirit, thinking creatively about how he can still do what he does via the internet. So he did
That's
when
so
we,
amazing.
yeah, I mean, he did when we moved to Mexico, he had a band that was thriving and performing and touring. And he recreated a new band with Mexican musicians and they toured. When we were moving to Switzerland, now we had these two kids. So he made the decision to be like the stay-at-home dad. But while the kids were in school, he would descend into a room that had become his studio. And that's where his podcast was born. And his podcast became a huge success, right? This was a music education podcast for kids that really took off. So a lot of parents took to it. It's called Noodleoof, and it's for kids, basically your kid's age. And it solved this problem that we've been experiencing, which is we didn't love listening to music for kids or podcasts for kids in the car because they were all very annoying to us.
Mm-hmm.
So it was like, just like whatever you think kids like, just these noises. And we were like, what if there was a podcast? He was like, what if there was a podcast that like was really helpful and fun and entertaining, but also kind of educational because he was a music teacher for kids, but really had some inside jokes and cultural references for parents. And so that constraint led to a lot of creativity. He is a walking example that like, if you have a purpose and expertise and passion and an open mind, you can find something beautiful. And so that led to a successful book deal based on one of the songs from the podcast. And now he has this line of beautiful board books for kids with Penguin Kids. And so I only share that because it's not a solution that every family can adopt to pick up and leave. But the dynamic between my husband and now that I'm actually talking about it, I feel so grateful. That dynamic allowed for us to make those moves. If he was working full time in a demanding job, I do not think we would have done this because it would have led to a much trickier discussion, right? Like, well, who's quitting? Who, what is he doing? So
that is so beautiful. This partnership is so beautiful. And it's amazing to see both of your growth mindset. Like you just embrace challenges and opportunities and use creativity intentionally. And I don't believe he had planned what come after. Right? He just like embrace it and then all the good things come later.
Exactly. And I think, it's in reflection that you become aware of the beauty of some of these messages that we read about and hear about. So believe that if you follow your purpose and follow your heart, good things will come. We hear this all the time.
All the time. Mm-hmm.
And when I tell this story, I realize how much that has panned out for both of us. So, he is somebody who, again, like me, we don't walk around with this end vision. We're going to be this kind of couple. Mm-hmm. We're going to have this kind of family. But I think where we are aligned is how we want to feel. What is the environment we want to create for the kids? We fast forward to our kids being in their 20s. We want them to want to come back to be with us. We have lots of conversations about like how we were raised and why it's difficult to have like a fun, not that like my mom isn't fun, but like she is of a different generation. She was a single mother. I don't even know how she did that. And so I'm like, I don't want to have like an authoritative vibe as a parent. So like we talk about these things. I share all of this because when we make decisions about what we're doing, what people don't see is that it's always oriented towards life before it is about my job or whatever. I mean, I'm ambitious. I have things that I want to do, but I'm very concerned with the passing of time, how quickly it goes, how exhausted one can feel when one isn't really present. And so when I think about the decisions that we've made, it's like, well, how will this family feel? Like, what are the stories and emotions that we're imbuing in our children? What's the community around them? And so I think that anchoring is our North Star more than like the specifics of things that we want to do. So even today.
Thank you for sharing that. It is such a beautiful alternative because oftentimes, even think about like designing our life, we think about those tangible things we want to achieve, the wealth we want to accumulate. But I really appreciate you sharing like your North Star is around connecting to maybe your soul or feeling or heart, which should be our North Star because that is like the core of life and the collective experiences. It's just so amazing to hear that. And I'm excited because my husband helped me editing the podcast, and I'm sure he'll listen to this part, and I'm curious what his reaction is. Yeah, but so that all makes sense now because when you make decisions, you said you discuss with your husband and talk about the experiences. So maybe share a little bit like when you made decision to go to Twitter and then Netflix, was there any challenging times? Because we know those two cultures so different, not to mention what's the X now.
Yes, I think about that time as being one that was full of personal like learning. So I'll tell a little bit of a story. So at some point when I was in Switzerland, I was like, I want to feel like the way that I am, the way that I think about business. And I'm a very passionate person. So I think once I'm in the company and I'm aware of the goals and the priorities, I will do everything in my power to achieve the work that needs to be done in a way that is going to be motivating for the people who look up to me, but also collaborative across the board. So my direct peers, but also up people who I am reporting into all the way across the organization. So I'm fully present, right? I'm like very much inside of that place. And so I wanted to feel more fully expressed at work when I was getting more senior at Colgate. Fully expressed means if I am about to take a priority to the next level. In this case, at Colgate, there was a desire to grow the share of toothpaste sales in sub-Saharan Africa. Because you look across the continent of Africa, really across Asia as well, people have different ways of brushing their teeth. Not everybody is going to the store to buy toothpaste and toothbrushes. There are people who have ancient wisdom handed down to them on how to take care of their mouths, and we as a manufacturing company needed to respect that. But the company doesn't think about all of these nuances. They're like, where's the money? Let's just sell a cheaper version and market it to them. And so I am somebody who's like, well, what about the people? Let's understand. And I remember talking to some of my partners, and these were often like the marketing directors, about how to push back. And not to do it in an antagonistic way, but to say, I know that this is the business goal, but what about the work we need to do to understand whether a different product innovation might better meet the needs of this people and still meet your goals? And the response that I'd often get, because at this point I'm very senior, was, we need to do this because we were told. And that was frustrating for me because I wanted to be in a space where we could at least have a conversation, a debate. And so part of the move to Twitter was to, be in a culture that felt like there was more debate and discussion. And if I presented insights about something, or even no insights, just a question about, can we do it better? Can we serve the people you want to serve in a more efficient and effective way? That there would be 3 people who would stop and say, let's discuss. So when I made the decision to move, and I had a bunch of companies I was thinking about, I was going for values first. So again, it was less like, I want to work for a big social media company. It was more, where can I find a space where the way that I am naturally, and you know a lot about how I operate. I'm people-centered. I truly care about the development of others. I am not afraid to challenge. I'm more of a business person first who happens to have a research background. And so that is what made me end up applying all over the place. And I had 2 offers, one from Netflix, one from Twitter, thankfully. And I was very surprised because I was sure that my CPG experience would not lead to the opportunities. And when I moved from Twitter to Netflix, I had gotten not laid off, actually fired, because I think laying off is something different, because of something very toxic that was going on. And I think I did not realize then, because I come from this world of consumer packaged goods where things kind of are comfortable, right? There's not a lot of layoffs. And this world of tech, I was like, oh my gosh. And it was the best gift that I could have gotten to get fired, because it made me come face to face with the reality that though I didn't think I was one of those people who had a big ego, I did have ego associated with my job because it was all I talked about. It was, I was like, hey, I'm head of research at Twitter. And once you have that moment of separation, particularly as a mother, I had to look at it and be like, okay, I know I didn't deserve this, but it happened. I have no control. I have to accept it. This is a moment for me to go inward and really explore who I am outside of work. What am I offering the world? How can I be a better mother? What is this gift giving me? And so when I actually got the call from Netflix, right? Because Netflix had actually offered me a job that I turned down to go to work for Twitter, because Netflix wanted me to move to California, and Twitter was like, you could move back to New York from Switzerland if you want to. But I remember having such a sense of peace inside of my body that even though I was happy to get that Netflix job, I was able to approach work and the dynamics of work from a healthier place. And so I stayed at Netflix for 2 years, but during that time, I continued to grow into this inner knowing, this inner sense of self, this inner purpose. So no matter what was going on around me, I was sort of able to both be like, well, I don't like the way you're acting, coworker X, or the perceptions that you have about me, coworker Y, but I understand the presence that I have. And when you get to a point where you're so at peace with yourself, sometimes it's unnerving to people who are not at peace with themselves. But as human beings, we operate very unconsciously. And so nobody's like, well, actually the reason, Bonnie, that I'm feeling this way about you is because you appear perfect. You have 2 kids and a husband, you are nice, you get work done. Nobody will say these things. But I think when you are able to, have a real peace about yourself and a true love of humanity and other people, you could look at people and you could see that what they're really projecting is pain and insecurity. And so I had this feeling of calm in the workplace, but I also had this feeling of, what if I were to take everything that I am, that I've been searching to find a place to fit, right? Going back to what I said, I was looking for somewhere where my values and the way that I was would be more accepted and loved and appreciated. That's why I moved from Colgate. And then I was like, oh, there'll never be a place. You know what I mean? Like, I will always be in a situation where I'm kind of trying to consider personalities, perceptions, people's insecurities. what if I were to give this gift of knowledge, experience, and love to people, but on my own? And so that's where I'm at. But I think the navigating the feelings of tension, the uncertainty, I think I became really good at it once I got fired from Twitter. Turned it around and said, what is this gift that I've been given and what is it teaching me? It was painful, but it took a lot. It led to a lot of growth. And by the time Netflix came around, nothing would shake me. Things happened that I'm not even going to get into on this podcast. And I would just be like, this is wild. But also I can see the humanity, right? The flaws of people. I mean, I'm not perfect, but it was a beautiful thing to be like, oh, you're giving me this negative feedback because, and I'm the kind of person who will look for the good in everything. So there's always some truth in the feedback. But if people were unreasonable or nasty or whatever, I'm smiling now as I speak. I was able to be like I could see the 8-year-old child in them. And I would be like, oh, like you're angry right now, but it's not me. You're not angry at me. You're angry because of something that is going on in you that you don't even know. And so it is a great stabilizer. And the big message for me is that's why you need to do the inner work, whether it's therapy, spirituality, God, friendship. The more that
So
you can kind of,
important.
yes, exactly, strengthen the inside, like the trunk of a tree. So no matter what wind blows, you are stable and strong.
I love that. Love that metaphor. I have been going through inner work the past year, and I'm always a believer. I'm a Christian, and I feel like I connect to God in all sorts of ways. But this year, it seems like become really clear where my core is, where my roots I want it to be. And I echo what you just mentioned. When you explore yourself after Twitter, that stuff is unshakable, no matter what, whether that's Netflix or next name. But I understand what you're saying, like, you know what you want so clearly.
Yeah, I know what I want to feel, right? So clearly, less than like what I want specifically, but the work is also because I want to, like, I realize how quickly time goes, and before you know it, our kids are going to be out of the house.
Right.
So we only have so much time to show up as better humans so that we're not passing down our traumas, we're not passing down an isolated environment. And so, though I'm not advocating that everybody just quit, right? Like, I worked hard for like 2 decades and I'm at a point in my life where I can explore these other pursuits. But my girls are getting a better version of me, right? So, like, when I'm present on the weekend or present in the afternoon or present in the morning, it's a different kind of presence. And it's relentless. Like, I am exhausted by motherhood. I love my kids, but the changes as kids enter their preteen years are astounding, and there is no playbook. You
Right.
have lots of playbooks on how to teach your kids how to tie their shoes, how to eat by themselves for the first time, how to put on clothes. But dealing with the things that start to come up, social dynamics,
Right.
feelings of jealousy, feelings of want, comparison, we already deal with that on our own as individuals. And then to try and sort of like help your kids through this, help your kids through the moodiness, not be affected by the energy. And so I am grateful to now have more energy back because I'm not dealing with the social issues of work, which could be exhausting, right? Like, think about all of the times when you're experiencing challenging. A lot of it is, all right, I guess I have to talk to this person. Let me schedule a one-on. First, I'll Slack them, and then I'll, approaching tense situations at work can make you sad.
Right. Like, drag your energy.
Totally drag your energy. And it's a roadblock to just getting the work done. And so I've sort of dispersed or transferred that energy to, okay, if I want to feel in 10 years, like the kids are not just like coming back to us in moments of obligation. Okay, it's the holidays, I'm going to see mommy and daddy, but like we're like grown-ups who are able to just sort of relate to each other as humans and like enjoy spending time together. What is required of us as parents now?
Wow,
So that's
very
even that thought.
intentional.
Everything is exactly, everything's relational, everything's very intentional. But yeah, I mean, I do think that the work is inner, and it's also these intentional things like, okay, well, what do I want to feel? Like if I'm making 45-year-old me proud, like what do I have to do now so that she looks back and she's like, okay, thank you for doing this, not this.
Wow. So many gems. We don't have enough time to cover everything I want to ask you, Nikkia. Well, we'll have to meet in person at some time, some point of time.
I will say this was a fun conversation to have with you. I'm open to doing a part 2, but I'm
let's do
grateful for this opportunity for part 1. And like I said at the top, it is very wonderful to watch you grow. It astounds me that the world brought us back together, and that you have these memories of me and I have these memories of you. And I'm very, very thrilled to be in your circle, in your community. So thank you for doing this.
Thank you so much. So much gratitude for your time, your wisdom, and just this humanity. I feel so empowered in my body now. I literally was sweating.
Yeah. Well, listen, we should talk. It's like around me, I have all these things. I have this book. I don't know if you can see it, The Meaning of Life. So I don't know. I think there's something too about parenting that made life feel shorter. There are moments when you have babies where it's like, oh my gosh, the days are endless. You're tired.
Right.
But I think once the kids start walking and talking, and then you're like, wait, wow, I already have a 5-year-old and an 8-year-old. Oh my God, I have a 15-year-old, and the time starts to fly. And I
feel it now.
You feel it. And that's the thing. It's like, you can't hold on to it. You need to push forward to pursue your own dreams, right? I'm sure you and your partner are working towards certain goals. But at the end of the day, the more we're like, wait, life is short. When we are in our 70s, what are the conditions that we want around us? Having a fancy job, a ton of money, great. But like, do we feel good about ourselves? Do we love each other still? Do our kids what are the conditions? And so I think that's my big message. Even when I do the coaching, let's orient ourselves in the feelings of life more. And then there's a clarity that happens in the decisions that we start to make, because all of a sudden you're like, oh, does this align with the feeling of joy? Does this align with the feeling of love? Does this enable my kids to feel supported and empowered? Because that's the vibe I want. Anyway, I know I need to go. This was fantastic.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Yeah, we'll connect for sure.
Listen, my love to you, your kids, and your hubby. Thank you for this, and we'll talk so soon. I'm so excited.